All right, welcome in the Bobby Carpenter Show, and I got my guy Anthony Schlegel. And yeah, we didn't have
Yes.
a show on Monday, Memorial Day weekend, so I hope everybody commemorated appropriately and properly. Schlegs got a chance to, have a good time, enjoy some grilling, enjoy some drinks. The weather was pretty nice here in Columbus for once. It got hot on Monday finally, or a little bit
It,
warmer.
it was
Um,
beautiful.
it
What
was.
did you do? What did you do? I want to know how you commemorated.
How I commemorated? Well, I went down to my neighbors. We had a lot of graduation parties and everything that I was hitting up all week. And then we had some kids' sports. Caleb had his soccer tournament. They made the final, which is always a double-sided sword because you're happy they made the final, but in the end, that means you're going to be out there Sunday afternoon for another game. And with that happening, then I didn't want to head down to our place on the Ohio River. It would have been a lot of driving and a lot of travel then to go all the way down there when I wouldn't got down there till 5 to like put the boat in and then pull it out the next day at like 1 o'clock. Like that was just a lot of
Right.
work because I'm the one that does it all. Don't get a lot of help.
Dad.
Yeah. So it stinks. So dad's like the one working, doing that. So Cora went down, saw her parents. RJ went down with her. So I just hung out at my neighbor's house and, we had some drinks and sat by the pool, recovered from, that was on Monday, but recovered a little bit from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, a little 3-day bender, if you will. And by the way, we're going to build bender on here in a moment.
Richard.
So that was, it was a good time, but I was ready to relax, ready to hit a nap this afternoon. Got a good workout in. Got a good workout on Monday. Went and banged out a mile, ran some quarters, did all that stuff. Had some fun. Tried to thank everybody I know who was in the service or has been in the service for providing us those freedoms and safeties that we get to experience every single day of the year. So that was a little bit of I did a lot of graduation parties, man. Like I said, just bouncing around and doing some of that stuff as well. How was yours, Schlex?
I'll tell you this. I mean, that's why I asked you, because I was reflecting Monday, and I choose my life, and my life is chaos. And my son, as I was like telling them how to pack up and moving pods and got a lot of stuff done before I came back to Ohio. I was articulating the fact over the last 2 years, I spent well over $32,000 traveling back and forth, not including a lot of other things. So the number is probably around 40,000 to make it work for my family to graduate high school in Florida. And I'm at my shop yesterday, AKA the difference, the Ultimate Striking Machine. And I was at the Armory, other place that I run, off of Kinnear. Boom, let's go. It's amazing. But I was just sitting up there and I was like working and drinking some garage beer. And it was just like, I went to an Air Force Academy. A lot of friends that served in the military and appreciate that. And I love our military. But there's those ones that made the ultimate sacrifice. And I'm just sitting here. I'm like, how lucky am I? I don't want to go sit by a pool, Bob. Like, honestly, you know what I did? I made striking machines. I made pad. I stuffed this 5,000 machines in the wild. My hands have been on all 5,000. I take a lot of pride in that. And I get to sit there in a shop by myself, listening to country music, pounding some LFGO energy pouches because I didn't have any monsters, some nicotine, and drinking garage beer. And I'm just like, you know what? I appreciate those. That's how I remember them. I was like, man, I am grateful to live in a country that I have the autonomy to pick and choose how I spend my time. And I spend my time doing those businesses that I did because that's my responsibility. And it just was on my mind about it. And I kid you not, like, I love being by myself sometimes because I can reminisce. And I thought about Pat Tillman, and I thought about, and I saw it in our group chat about you putting that in there about the national anthem. And I just think that sometimes we get lost in the chaos of the things that really matter. And there's a lot of people that don't take the United States for granted, that are serving our country. And those that gave their life, and also the families that had to deal with it,
Yeah.
in perpetuity because of that loved one and that loss, that we can forget those things. And so, anyways, I was grateful to have the time to actually put my mind on those things that need to be remembered.
That's good, Schlex. I'm glad you got a
Yeah,
chance to do that. And it's, like I said, man, it's something very special that we get to do. I'm glad you had some garage beer while you did that and got to enjoy the day. I always ask, Schlex,
amazing. It's amazing how that gets one day, and there's other things that get months. Just
Yeah,
throwing it out.
I'm with you. I agree 100%. But I always ask when I do the Super Bowl tours, like I was down at Gitmo this year, say, how do you want us to honor you? On the Memorial Day, like, what can we do? Like, how
Well,
how should
they're
how should we
veterans. They,
honor
they
you? Like
have their
this?
own day. Veterans
Yeah,
Day.
and
How
this
should
is
we?
this is the honor. I mean, it's Veterans Day, Memorial Day, and Memorial Day, obviously, for the Gold Star families out there, but for all people that are serving, and like just say thank you and go have an awesome day. Go do what exactly it is you want to do because that's what
Yeah,
America affords you. So it's like, you know what? So I always try to remember that, like we're serving here so that you can go drink beer and do whatever you want to do on that day. So
exactly.
enjoy it, and it's something pretty special and pretty powerful. So hopefully you not don't only do that for yourself, Schlegs, and everybody, but make sure that your children are a
One
part of
hundred
it as well,
percent.
and you explain to them the importance of it too. But now we're going to welcome in our guy,
Let's
Bill
go,
Bender, assuming he's still
Richard.
ready to lurk and pop out. Um, Excited to have him in, and so we'll start off with our guy Bill here. And Bill, you living in Central Ohio. What is your Memorial Day go to?
Well, I mean, I did a lot of yard work, and it's
Yeah,
funny to hear Schlegs talk. This is a true story. Like sometimes when I'm doing the yard work and it's hot or I start sweating, you get tired, whatever. Honestly, like on Memorial Day weekend, you think about the veterans that whether it was World War II or Vietnam, clearing a jungle, or the soldiers that went to the Gulf War and how hot it was over there, and I think to myself, I shouldn't be complaining. I literally have that mechanism where I was like, why am I complaining? These guys did this for our country. And, obviously, like you mentioned, had a couple guys in the class ahead of me, in the class below me, in our class that were over in Afghanistan and Iraq and those places. And you never minimize what they did for their country. And I'm always quick to thank those guys. And it's such an important holiday that, all I do whenever I see a serviceman is say, thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. So, well, no matter what the age is, if I see a hat that says veteran, I always say thank you. That's part of who I am. And then spent the weekend. I think both kids had sleepovers at one point, and we had a romantic date at the St. Charles Hilliard Davidson lacrosse game with my wife. We
Ooh,
went and we caught that. It was a really good game on Sunday night that they had to play after the graduation parties, but two really good teams. So that was my weekend, and waking up early today and trying to get back in the grind of college football. And there's plenty to talk about there.
Oh yeah, there's a lot, Bill, and the SEC, what they do with they've got their spring meetings, and then they have the coaches meetings. They've got all these different meetings. They do it at kind of low points. I mean, Memorial Day weekend, like this area right there, there's not a ton going on, and so we've been listening to Greg Sankey talk a lot. We've got stuff coming out with Yormark and Phillips with the Big 12 and the ACC. Where do you I guess, what's your biggest takeaway from kind of what the noise has been over the last 4 or 5 days?
A lot of passive aggressivism. And, from the ACC and the Big 12 talking about the good of college football and not the outcome we wanted, to Greg Sankey saying he's not going to be lectured. I thought Pat Forty had an excellent column this morning on the whole dynamic between these conferences, because I think from, Greg Sankey's point of view, you're looking at a conference that has the most national championships since the dawn of the BCS era, and they're going to want what they want. Now, I will say this, and I know we're going to get into it a little bit. When I hear the phrase 442213, I think, is that a zip code? It's confusing. I don't like it. I'm not a fan of this automatic qualifier model, even if the realization is, yes, the Big Ten and the SEC, I think on any given year, Bobby, they would get more than half of the teams anyway. So why are we trying to automatically hand them 50% when it's going to make the rest of college football angry? And that's exactly what's happened at this point.
Bill, I like that. I thought you were going to go with like the 4-4-2 is like a new defense. Just putting people out there, even though it doesn't add up to 11. Why are we seeing so many like divisiveness between the conferences? Like why is it the SEC feels, and I understand that they've won the most national championships, but it's also a product that's out there. They're even having problems in their own about with the states being able to regulate NIL. Why are we hearing this and not like, let's get all of our stuff together, ducks in a row? to be the best conference possible and then go out there and get it? Because the biggest brand in college football is the Big Ten as far as money and TV money. So why are we hearing about this? Why isn't that the emphasis?
It's a good question because part of this is, and we've talked about it on here last year, first weekend of the college football playoff. It's supposed to be this monumental weekend, on campus games from South Bend to Austin to Columbus. Amazing atmospheres. Happy Valley was the other one. And what did I just remember being in the press box at the shoe, pulling up X, and all people were doing was complaining about South Carolina not being in, and Ole Miss
Right.
not being in, and Alabama not being in. And it became, that was what the first weekend became. We talked about the SEC schools that were not in the playoff instead of the schools that were. Now, granted, these were all blowouts. And, Tennessee, by the way, was in the playoff, and it didn't go too well for them. So I think they're trying to protect their interest as one of the yin and yang conferences. And the SEC, I think they're looking at it from a competitive spot. And the Big Ten's in on this too. I mean, Tony Petitti absolutely wants 4. But to your point, I think the 4 there, it comes down to TV. He's a TV guy. And Pat Forty brought that up in his column too. It's a great point. The Big Ten is definitely more competitive right now and has won the last 2 national championships. But it's also in it for the TV ratings from coast to coast. It's the only conference with, well, the ACC is too, but coast to coast, huge brands, 4 time zone football, and it's really good.
It is. It seems to me, Bill, when they start on the 4-4, 2-1-3 or whatever, that it almost is like a problem without they're looking for a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. Because in any given year, like you said, they're going to get 4. Big Ten, SEC, both probably get 4, maybe even 5. And that's a real possibility. If you looked at this year, like that's something that could have potentially happened. And I know that they're trying to carve out their stake, but like their schools get the most money, they're the most successful at large, and so it seems like that's going to be something that's going to probably happen anyway. And all everybody wanted to do was to obviously have the straight seating. Like, this doesn't make sense. We'll do straight seating. Well, then when you get into this situation where you have all these different auto bids, then all of a sudden it starts getting squirrely again. It starts getting really confusing when they start doing these different bids, and they're talking about, the play-in games and everything else for maybe, the 3 and 6 and the 4 and the 5 and some of these conferences. And I mean, most people, I think, Bill, are trying to move away from conference championship games, and somehow they're like now trying to slide in more inventory on that weekend.
Well, imagine how it would have gone over in Columbus last year. You lose the Michigan game, and then you fall into a 3-6 game on conference championship weekend. And I don't remember who finished 6th in the Big Ten, let's say, for the sake of been like Iowa, right? Yeah. Who's watching that, or who's getting excited for that? I don't think, I always go back to this with conference championships is we grew up in an environment where the Big Ten didn't have a conference championship game. Were there years where Ohio State?
We didn't have one.
No, yep. and we didn't need it, honestly. Like, I remember years of, I remember watching, I think one year Wisconsin and Ohio State split the Big Ten title. It might have been Wisconsin's first under Barry Alvarez, and we all survived. We all made it through that. And that's why I don't think the Big Ten is as reliant on a conference championship game as the SEC is, because yes, it's a big part of that conference's identity. Yes, they were the first one to do it in 1992, but that's one that I'm like, do you really need it? I mean, Texas, Georgia, that was just an extra game for those teams last year, in my opinion. Yes, you got to hold up the SEC trophy, but and Georgia got to do that, but what happened in the playoff? They lose the first game. I think most Georgia fans would trade that SEC championship for a win against Notre Dame and a berth in the Final Four. I could be wrong.
Maybe. Here's what another thing I'm thinking about. We're talking about these auto bids. The conference championship game, in my opinion, is dead once you go to 16 teams. So you shouldn't have to do that. If you already get 4, it should be decided on the field. How do we get it to where the schedule is somewhat consistent, Bill? Because college football in the portal has become, what's the word I'm looking for? Not like there's a lot more parity, especially outside, I would say, like the top 10. There's a lot more parity in college football. One team could be terrible. The next year they get some dudes, a.k.a. Indiana, and they're a good football team. So where do we go with like the seeding, and how do we get the schedules kind of to match so that it's equal across the board? Or does it have to go to the draw? It's just who wins the games. How does that look in your opinion? Because I'm anti the play-in. I think that's when the bowl should start for all the AYOs that are out there, and then move that through.
Yeah, well, the first step would be getting everybody to play the same number of conference games. So when the SEC and the ACC move to 9 games, that's step one in equaling out the schedules. It's so funny that we have these formulas and metrics.
So they're at 8 currently.
Correct.
Right? We're at 9. We're at 9 already.
And the Big 12 was at 9.
So we've already been at 9. So they're a late mover. They're talking all this stuff, and they're still soft because they like to get Mercer State, right? And like that's what they like to do.
Right. Well, I mean, the way I would construct a schedule is you play your 9. Honestly, Schlegs, I'd go to 10 if I were the Big 10 or the SEC or the Big 12.
100%.
I'd play 10 conference games. You have 18 teams in your conference, play 10. Then you can play one, other Power 4 school. And if you want to play a Group of 5 school and get that paycheck game for those teams. So I don't mind watching the Bobcats or Akron or, BG coming into the shoe for one game. Ohio State doesn't need to play 2 MAC teams on any given year. Then you play a Power 4 opponent, play 10 conference games.
Sounds amazing, Bill.
Yeah, common sense, right? And then if the Big 10 wanted to, and this might be less popular, maybe split the Big 10 in half into 2 divisions. And I know we got away from divisions, and that sounded good. And I was probably one of the people that called for that. But if you made an East and a West, you could play the 8 teams on your side one year. And then if we went to 10, you could play 2 on the other side. And that way, maybe it's less agreeable, but I think you would get to play everybody, and you would get to have some consistent rivalries, because that is one thing we talk about every year, Schlegs, is schedule imbalance. And I'll go through them this week, where the Big 10, who has the most imbalanced schedule, who does not play in Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. That's what we always look for in these summer months. We try to find anything we can write about.
Well, you already led into it, Bill. I'm going to hop in here, Bob. How do you break down a Big 10 division? So now I had somebody in the Chris is like, Big 10 division? Question mark. I like that. How do you even break that down? Because we saw leaders and legends. Terrible.
Right.
Okay. So how do you balance the powers that be in divisions, and then also still not have to play a conference championship game? Right. I mean, the beauty is, I'm with you, Bill, that you could be the Big 10 champ and not have to be it. You could be the AFC West champ. Right now, the conference championship in the NFL, you gotta win those games to get to the Super Bowl. That's how they do their bracket. But how would you break down this East Coast to West Coast, super girthy Big 10, just like you, around Richard Bender? How would you break that down?
Well, I'd do it by geography. And I know, again, I get that we went away from it for a reason, because the imbalance was on the East side with Penn State, Michigan, Ohio
all the
State.
good ones.
Yeah, but what games do you want to watch in the regular season?
Yeah.
Would you prefer to watch Ohio State and Penn State every year, or would you prefer Ohio State play Washington? And that's the travel thing too, because the 2 time zone factor was very real in the Big 10 last year. So, throw those West Coast schools with Nebraska and Iowa and whoever, you could balance it that way. If we went to 11 conference games, which would be even better in my opinion, you would play the 8 teams on one side, and then you would rotate 3-3-3 with the other 9 each year. So you play Nebraska every 3rd year. Now, Nebraska, UCLA, USC, Oregon, they didn't sign up for that. I get that. But at the same time, Oregon came into the Big 10 and won it in year 1. And that statement got lost in the Rose Bowl blowout. But they still did come in and win the conference in their first year. And that's something I didn't think they would do.
I was very, very impressed.
Ooh, yeah. Chris came on the chat. How about 4 of them? How about you break it down into 4? I don't think you could do the quad.
Well, the SEC.
Quad, but you can't. Hey, we'll just bring in Notre Dame, and we'll go get us another one, and we'll have 20, and then you guys have things of 5.
Well, that's what, Bill, don't you remember the SEC? They were talking about doing like those pods when they were going to do the scheduling, and that was something that they'd kind of thrown out of trying to figure that out of how to make this all work, because the the bigger this gets, the crazier it gets. And so I don't know if that's a good solution or not. When you're trying to figure out this schedule consistency. I'm with you though, Bill. People just want to play the hits and they want to see the best teams being played. And so they've got to be able to find a way to get those games during the regular season out there.
Well, okay, let me ask you guys this. Outside of Michigan and Penn State, I think Penn State would be number 2. Who would be the next 2 teams you would want to see Ohio State play every year? And off the top of my head, I'm like, Michigan State, and they were in the East. And then the next one, as weird as it sounds, because they play for that Illinois trophy, I was like, throw Illinois in there. Play them every year because it's a cool trophy. Maybe that's a miss, but those are in general competitive games, and it is a classic old school Big Ten game. I can't think of the 4th one, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, but you brought up Illinois there, and I want to get to Illinois here in a minute. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back, and then we're going to dive back in because, Bill, they had a top 25 list that over at Sporting News that Bill helped put together there and did a great job with it, that they released the top 25 coaches coming into 2025, how that looks. We'll break down that list with Bill Bender coming up next.
Creative, experience, results. That's what drives growth. That's what builds brands. That's Lake Spur Marketing, a full-service agency built on trust, strategy, and performance, not fluff. From bold strategies to flawless execution, every campaign is rooted in smart planning and driven by clear goals. We don't chase clicks. We build partnerships. We show up, dig in, and deliver every single time. Lake Spur Marketing. The proof is in our partners.
All right, welcome back in the Bobby Carpenter Show, and our guy Bill Bender, the Sporting News, joining us. And he puts together it's list season, Bill, and so you're always working on these different ones, and they're always a lot of fun. You brought up Illinois as Ohio State, a team play every year. I actually have an Illabuck over here in my office, just behind the camera, that was going to get thrown away. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Honestly, Bill, he has the Illabuck. We put it on the couch. It was right there when we were doing a deal. It's amazing.
It's a good trophy. I'm just saying, it's a really good trophy.
And you know what? I would say this: like, who'd you mention? You said Michigan State, Penn State, Michigan. I would honestly over. Look at that guy. Look at that. The original Illabuck. I mean, those would have been one of the things in college that. Why didn't we get that when we were in college and take it to old school, Bob? Like that's what we should, or Alcatraz.
Well, this was
behind the bar.
It was outside Gene's office. They're going to throw it away. This is a pretty cool one, Bill, because it's from 68 to 75.
Yeah, the good ones.
So it comprises, the national championship in 68 and then all the way through Archie's years and everything else through the end of Woody. So it was a pretty cool one that they were going to dispose of. So I found a good home. Like, it's like a rescue shelter here for lost memorabilia that was
lost memorabilia from the Woody.
Yeah, cast away. But when you see that in Mario or Brett Bielema, you have ranked 25th, coming in right there at the bottom. Last year he was 46th. Obviously he's had a lot of success at Wisconsin, maybe not quite as much as at Arkansas, and then doing a pretty good job at Illinois. I mean, people are talking about them as a dark horse team this year for the playoff. Is Brett Bielema, does he have them back to where this is the Illinois team that is kind of right in that second tier below Ohio State and Michigan?
You can say what you want about him, Coach Bielema, but he knows how to coach in the Big Ten. He did that at Wisconsin, and Arkansas. I mean, you look at their record with and without him, it's not that different. And he comes to Illinois, builds that program. They've been competitive. Champaign and you guys, it's not an easy place to play there. And when they're good, they need, when they're bad, you can go in there and win. But I think what he's done is they're coming off a 10-win season. Luke Altmaier's played a lot of football. He's got good interior lines on both sides. And they've put some dudes in the league. You know what I mean? Like Devin Witherspoon, good player at the next level. And they're going to have more to follow. Chase Brown, another guy that's really taken off with the Bengals. So that no-nonsense style works. I think the Ohio State game, that's a tricky game for the Buckeyes there. I do think they'll win, but it won't be easy. And their schedule is set up that a 10-2 Illinois team or an 11-1 Illinois team could be a lot like this year's Indiana. People won't like it, I think, but they'll respect it a little more because they have the Buckeyes on the schedule, and they've kind of earned it coming off a 10-win season.
I like Illinois. I like Brett Bielema. I know his strength coach really well. I remember when he was at Arkansas. He knows how to coach and win in the Big Ten. They play good defense. You got to get some guys, right? They're a developmental program, and they got to develop guys. They got to get some dudes in the portal, specifically a quarterback, something like that. And you have a chance to win because you can win with defense in the Big Ten. I want to go through this because there's a right smack dab in the middle. You have some juiciness, okay? The question is this. And he's a Mount Union guy, okay? I'm not talking about Kurt Signetti, but Matt Campbell, number 16. Then you scroll down, you got Jeff Brom at Louisville. Then you had Sonny Dykes. And yes, it's fun to say his last name. It's TCU, okay? And then Kyle Whittingham, really like. So obviously you see two guys that I like. Then you got Lincoln Riley slinging in there at 12 and Josh Heupel at 11. My question is this. How did you come up with that 11 through 16? Because I just look at Kyle Whittingham and the resources that Matt Campbell have at Utah and at Iowa State, like the coaching jobs they do there are significantly more impressive in my mind than the other ones that are ahead of them.
This sounds like the argument I have with my editor every year because this list is really and we're going to have the full 1 to 136 later in the week.
It'll be juicy.
And it's just it's an undertaking to say the least, but it's almost like 4 different lists. It's the Matt Campbell, Kyle Whittingham types, and then it's the blue blood coaches. And how do you, because my argument back is always, well, they'll say that, Steve Sarkisian has everything at Texas. Well, I was like, well, Texas is operating at a high level right now. So we have to respect that.
Yes.
Lincoln Riley, why do you have him so high? That's the question I get. I was like, if we're looking at totality at Oklahoma, he was a playoff regular. He's developed quarterbacks. They're going to have to make the Big Ten adjustment. That's a guy I feel like in this top 25, I'm going to get criticized the most for. And then, for Matt Campbell, guys like him and Kyle Whittingham, like Utah went 5-7 last year.
I think
it's easier to give Whittingham and Campbell, and it used to be David Cutcliffe when he was on this list. People, why is he there? And I'm a guy that's like, you can still coach there, but you still have to be accountable when you have the 4-8 or the 3-9 or the miserable season that Mike Norvell had at Florida State last season, which got him off of the top 25.
All right, Bill, before we get you out of here, one more thing. Ohio State reportedly was trying to move their game with Texas on Labor Day weekend to Sunday night, which I think everybody would have loved here in Columbus.
Yeah, I loved it.
Said no. Are you surprised that this is where we're at now in college football, where I understand there's a little bit of travel and some things, but it's opening the season. It's a Memorial Day weekend, or Labor Day weekend. You're going off without any competition, no NFL. It would have been a huge, huge event. And the fact that the Longhorns then ex-nayed that.
I don't love it. And we talked about this where, Ohio State needs to have these games in prime time. And I need to do a deeper dive into the whole big noon factor with the program. That's something on my to-do list. But in general, I think from Texas' side, they probably know that those bars are open for 7 more hours if they play at 8. And it's going to be that much tougher a place to play at 8 than it is at noon. Not that it's not a hard place to play at noon, but I know how the Buckeye fans like to have that extra 8 hours, which, by the way, they used effectively against Tennessee when it was cold, and they didn't come into the stadium until they needed to, which was a lesson for the Vols fans. But yeah, I don't love it. Long story short, I wish that game was in prime time. I think it deserves to be prime time. When the AP poll comes out in August, I'm not going to be surprised if that's number 1 versus number 2, which makes it that much more disappointing that you're going to have that game on at 12 p.m. instead of 8 p.m.
Absolutely. All right, Bill, we appreciate you, sir. Thank you for spending some time with us. Try to recover this Memorial Day weekend blues and then get ready for the rest of the summer.
Hey, I will. Thanks so much for having me on, guys. Have a great week.
See you, brother.
All right, before we get
Richard Bender.
Parents and athletes, protect what matters most with Export mouth guards, trusted by professional athletes and designed by NHL team dentists. Export mouth guards are scientifically tested to help absorb those high-impact hits, protecting both your teeth and your brain. Export mouth guards feature 3 layers of advanced protection, including a patented use of carbon fiber, custom fit to your own unique 3D smile. Right in there, Schlegs. That means more protection, better performance, max comfort, and clear communication so you can focus on the game, not on your gear. Do not take chances with your safety. Visit exportguards.com/Bobby to save 15% on your order. Export, protect what matters most. More of the Bobby Carpenter Show coming up next. All right, Schlegs, let's stay with the coaching list talk. I don't know if you got to scan through that. Was there any surprises in there of where you thought people should be? Too high, too low? Since Bill's gone, you can talk trash about him now.
No, I'm not. I mean, I was going to ask him about why he came up with Bill Belichick, but it says it obviously in the article. You know, I do feel like Kenny Dillingham, like he's new to the scene. I really like what he does. They had one good year. Can you sustain it? Like part of that coaching thing is, and I was thinking about this as he alluded to it. Part of the reason the guys that are at the top is because they've been successful to get there. So you continue to give them the benefit of the doubt. Brett Bielema, when he went from Wisconsin to Arkansas, at the very first year in Arkansas, he'd been way up there. But as you know, they struggled in the SEC in Arkansas, he would have been out of it, right? And then it's taken some time to get back and see what he could do in Illinois. That being said, I think a lot of the times, just like somebody in the chat talked about, Indiana was a pretender just like Colorado. No, Indiana was significantly better. They did not have a very tough schedule, 100%, but they did win all their games. And they actually started to make a comeback in the second half of that game. You just good on good in a playoff against a great team that's better than you. You can't make mistakes. That's why they fell short. They started making a comeback in the second half. So I think they were for real. Anyways, now I digressed on that. But I think he did a really good job of getting as much of this correct. The thing is, there's not a lot. You could pick 1 through 10. I mean, first off, we know the top three are who the top three are. You know, actually, I'd even say top 5. However you want to put that order, you can put it. I was surprised that he had Marcus there as high as he did at 4. But then you go back, Bob, you're like, well, who would he put in there in front of him?
Yeah.
You know, Kalen DeBoer, like he was at Washington for a couple years. He had a lot of winning at a different level. He goes to Alabama. They don't do that well this year. They miss out on the college football playoff in his first year. How could you leapfrog, you know, Marcus and that just coming off of that year, even though his resume is more condensed than DeBoer's. So I thought the reasoning behind them all, based on how you read it, I thought they were valid.
Well, it's an imperfect science. There's a lot of subjectivity to it.
For sure.
You mentioned like the top 3. It was interesting that he had Ryan above Dabo Swinney, which most people will always put Dabo probably second behind Kirby just because they both have won 2 national championships and Ryan's won 1. He did win the most recent one, so maybe you get a little bump there, but Dabo got him back in line. And what's funny, Bill brought up the fact that Dabo is now 15-4 since the now famous Tyler from Spartanburg call. I don't know if you remember him calling in on the coach's show, and Dabo kind of went to task on that with him and was not all that happy about Tyler from Spartanburg and everything that he was talking about and transfer portal and everything else.
Yeah, he gave him his chip back, man. I mean,
did.
like, honestly, I'll be dead serious with you guys. When you look at head coaches right now, it's funny. I had somebody, ask me about the differences between Urban and Ryan. And, with all the different things that they're juggling in the portal, sometimes a call from the guy from Spartanburg kind of puts you back on into that chip mode. It's like, no, man, exactly how we're doing it is how I want it to be done, and it works. Let's go get to work and let's make sure that all these things are moving in the right direction. Sometimes you need that little jolt,
Yeah.
And so it's like, but I would say this of comparing the 3. To me, you're in the ACC. You're really the only team there. You cannot throw Miami in there. You're really the only team. SMU came up. You smoked them. They did make a comeback in that game.
Yeah. SMU, I think, is going to be here to stay. Like you were from that area,
They have talent there and they have money.
Yes,
that's what they have. They have talent, and Dallas wants The people that have the money in Dallas
Want SMU to be good.
SMU to be good.
And they've got players indigenous in that region that are easy
For
to
sure.
get to, that you can get them over there, and they're willing to spend, and they have players to spend it on locally, and that'll help a lot. So we'll see. I think Rhett Lashley, I think he was a little low on this list. Was he like 24? I want to say.
I think it was 23.
23, yeah, because he's in a good spot there, and I took them as a dark horse last year to win the ACC championship, and I think they're going to be
because of their schedule.
Because their schedule was fairly soft, and then Florida State not being very good made it even a little bit more advantageous. But then I figured they'd also would have some talent. So that's their first year in. They did a good job. Go ahead.
No, Bob, I clicked on I went up to Rhett Lashley, and I want everybody to understand this. I'll ask you, Bob, why was Arizona State able to be competitive in the Big 12, in the college football playoff? Why were they able to be competitive in it? Because they did what on offense?
Oh, they ran the football really well.
They ran the football. I'm just letting you guys know, if you go look at all of the ones that are made to be sustainable, and this is what my concern is for like Texas. Now, we saw it a long time ago. Oregon run you around the block 14 times, right? And then get you tired and go play. It doesn't work anymore. That's why you talked about Brett Bielema being able to work in the Big Ten. It's a different style of football. It's why it's paramount. Like, you look at offensive, defensive lines, like as much as the game of football has changed, it remains the same. And you win up front. And that's where the physicality of Penn State just beat the crap. They physically abused SMU early and often, rattled their quarterback, pick sixes. So they might be around in the ACC, but the playoff runs, guys, are going to be the ones that can be physical up front. I'm sorry, I had to get that.
Oh, that was good, Flags. That's the hard-hitting insight that the folks want to hear. That's the good stuff.
I'm just watching their linemen, and like on this picture that he has, and I pray to God that this guy doesn't play. But like 65 is just running back there. I'm like, dude, no, man. Like, that would get, like, Tyreek would just eat that guy's face off.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. We've got headlines coming up. Before that, I want to tell you about our friends over at Backer. That's bckr.com. Schlags, they've got premium Buckeye hats, jackets, unbelievable stuff. It's a premium product, the premium price, but it's got all of the bells and whistles that you want to see. One of my favorite things is the little pullover that I've got. Windbreaker. It's got UV protection. I wore it.
Where is it, Bob? Why don't I need one of those?
Well, they've got some stuff up there for you, Schlags, but it's sweet. It's lightweight. It's quarter zip. It's got like the little tag on there for the keys underneath. It's got UV protection. All the stuff looks good. It's like that high level golf, fishing, skiing, whatever apparel that you're going to have, fishing, like all that stuff out there. It's got all of those attributes. So please check it out. Go to bckr.com. A portion of the proceeds goes back to Buckeyes as well. The student athletes use promo code all caps Bobby BOBBY for some free expedited shipping. That's backer bckr.com. Go check them out. We got our headlines coming up next.
Creative, experience, results. That's what drives growth. That's what builds brands. That's Lake Spur Marketing, a full-service agency built on trust, strategy, and performance, not fluff. From bold strategies to flawless execution, every campaign is rooted in smart planning and driven by clear goals. We don't chase clicks. We build partnerships. We show up, dig in, and deliver every single time. Lake Spur Marketing. The proof is in our partners.
All right, so now we got our headlines brought to you by our friends over at Lake Spur Marketing, full service agency built on trust, on strategy, on performance. The Lake Spur team, here's what they do. They're going to shield you from all the unwanted nonsense that you got to deal with, the outside noise. They let you do what you do best, work on your business. So they've got the experience that you're looking for, over 100 years combined marketing experience. They eliminate the waste and they deliver on budget. They don't chase clicks. They build partnerships. Lake Spur Marketing, the proof is in their partners. All right, so we've got some news on both ends of the spectrum here for Buckeye wide receivers. Great news. If you see this, Cover of NCAA 25. Who do you think
What?
should be on the cover, Slags?
I mean, I would suspect Jeremiah.
Yeah, well, there it
And-
is right there, just released. It's got kind of a montage of people from all over the place, but Jeremiah, I believe that's Ryan Williams beside him, featured very prominently there. Look at him on the cover.
Just
Sitting
wide
there.
receivers, just look how big JJ is, Bob.
Oh, yeah, dude. JJ's the boss. That's why they had to
I
make
mean,
him
you get to
squat
see him
down.
in there. You get
I
to
know.
see him in there. You get to see him in there. Like, is he? I mean, we didn't even talk about how Marvin Harrison Jr. looks this year as opposed to last year. Have you seen JJ and like just is he over like 220, 225?
It's funny because if I'm not paying attention, he is built very similar to Arvell Reese, and Arvell plays linebacker. So,
They honestly, I have mistaken them
yeah.
before, like walking away because they have kind of this like broad shoulder kind of walk like
Very
this.
similar physical build.
Dude, they
Yeah.
do. They're
Similar heights,
100%.
similar physical build. Oh, yeah.
Except
I mean, Arvell's
245.
like 240. Yeah, Arvell's like 245 now, but JJ is so muscular that there's similarities. That's why they made him squat down, because you can't put him next to other wideouts because it's going to be embarrassing.
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
how much bigger he looks. Like, dude,
I'm
squat down.
I'm as fast as you, but I'm this big.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Yeah. So much bigger. So obviously
You
that's
can hop into my arms and like you can rock him like a baby, like just
really
hold the ball
could.
out.
He's a very beefy dude and great dude, working his butt off right now. They're doing the vertical jumps testing at the start every week. Like, so John Simon, I sit there and watch these dudes jump like 11 feet in the air and get a chance to see just their unbelievable, unadulterated athleticism, which is pretty darn special. And then also some rough news, and I don't know if you saw this. Julian
I
Fleming,
did see it.
who played Ohio State for 4 years, graduated from here, went back to Penn State last year. Got a pretty nice little NIL package to go there. And, he was the number one rated receiver coming out of high school and worked his butt off here. His first year was a little rough, worked his butt off after that. Really didn't necessarily have the production I think that people would have wanted, but did everything you asked him to do and was a good, solid starter here at Ohio State in the receiver room. Went to Penn State, like I said, didn't have nearly the year I think that they had hoped and he had hoped for. He had signed with the Packers. Apparently they had released him, but over the weekend, some rough news as he was, I think, back in Pennsylvania. Like I said, he's from Harrisburg and got in a wreck in an ATV accident with his girlfriend. Unfortunately, she passed away. I believe he is still in critical care, Schlags. And yeah, so not a great situation, to say the least, as she passed away. So thoughts and prayers with her family, and then also Julian's family as he's fighting for his life.
Yep. I don't know how to expand upon that, buddy. It sucks. You don't know the full background on everything, but it's just it's a bad situation. It's something that I even at my farm, right? Like when I got kids running around, there's rules that I got. I mean, a lot of the things it's with anything that could be harmful to you. It's the operation. I'm just talking. This has nothing to do with them. This has to do with how I prepare mine. Like they go out into the pond, or we're going fishing, or we're going on a lake, or we're going around the farm in UTVs and ATVs. It's like, man, there's rules and situations that I know about because I'm 44 years old and I've been a hillbilly for a long time that you don't know. So when Dad says this is what it is, like this is what it is, and like if you don't, I take your privileges. But it's just very unfortunate to see that this happened in this manner. So pray for him.
It's devastating, man. It's devastating for him. So I feel, like I said, thoughts and prayers with his family. I know he finished up at Penn State, but guy's a Buckeye, did a great job.
Sure.
And I really enjoyed getting to know Julian in his time. And so it's a tragic loss of life with his girlfriend, and hopefully he's able to pull through and, be healthy moving forward. That is it for our headlines today. Like I said, one good and then one very, very bad. Throw some of your questions in the chat as we got our tailgate talk where we answer your questions coming up next. All right, Schlegs, welcome back in here to our tailgate talk brought to you by friends at Real Truck. Bring your truck, Chief Bronco, to life with Real Truck. as well. You were telling a great story this morning, Schleggs, about how you had to pull this boat that got filled
Love
with
it.
water. By the way, vet tip, since you've been a farm owner for a while, when you take the boat out, you flip the boat over on its top.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you tell Hunter, we take the boat out, we flip it over, then it won't fill
Well,
with water.
Well, I had nothing to really do with water because normally when you pull it on the land and it has a plug, like we're talking like it's like a little 12-foot John boat.
Yeah, that's what
It's
my
not a,
dad
it's a
got.
big acre, whatever, not a big deal. And you can take it and there's like this tree that you can go and like literally just lift it up, put it against it, and you're fine. Keeps the stuff out, whatever. But the boat got washed away, and I got my Polaris. It's got a winch on it. And you guys got to remember, man, I've been like killing pigs since I was 15 years old. I mean, you want to talk about ATV accidents, man? Like some of the stuff I've done on an ATV, it's why I tell my kids what not to do. Going up like freaking hills like this with chasing hogs and stuff, crazy talk. Anyways, I pulled this boat out, but like Tidoff, Jeff was asking about like he's too old to bait a hook. He's 54 years old. I was like, dude, you got to go try new things so you can learn it. It's not really trying new things. It's about the experience of like what to do and what not to do. So I had to paddle out there in this tiny kayak, just like paddle out there. I had my winch all the way. I had another tow cable because it was kind of far out there. Hooked it up, winched that thing back in, no problem. But we got some great questions, Bob.
Quit playing with your Danish legs like Tommy Boy.
Exactly. It's so amazing. When our Lake Spur marketing comes out, I always chuckle at the fluff and
Of course you do.
and bold strategy because I automatically think of bold strategy cotton.
It is. It's favorite moment at OSU.
There's another one. Worst place to play. Back to back. Go ahead.
People brought up Wisconsin throwing batteries.
I love that.
Camp Randall, I would always say. Camp Randall and Penn State were the two. Happy Valley and Camp Randall by far. Wisconsin was ruthless. That's the only place where I've had people throw at me. Maybe a little bit at Penn State, Schleggs.
But I like that.
You never played. Because we were there my freshman and sophomore year.
I coached there in.
Yeah, you were the overtime. You were there with the overtime.
But not playing. Like I loved Penn State in the way that was, and like the chain link fence that we went out. Like when I think of worst place to play, I think of like dog crap, stadium, and like I think of Purdue and the locker room that we had.
Purdue and Northwestern had terrible locker room.
Terrible. So I would say like worst places to play, Purdue and Northwestern.
Like people made a big deal about the Iowa locker room that was pink. I'm like, but it was so big. Like we had tons of space.
It was spacious. Now, granted, you had to take a dump, and the dude was right there.
Yeah, there's no doors.
It's like, how do you wipe with nobody like watching you? You know what I'm saying? You want to talk about real stuff like that you got to contemplate when you're in there. That's why they do it. You're not thinking about the game. You're thinking about your wanger and how you're going to wipe because you're wide open, and this bomb that you're dropping, like you can't like auto flush. You there, man. Everybody's seeing all your deal. That's how they make it uncomfortable. But that was super fun though, right? Like the gamesmanship of that. I like that.
You know what else? Talk about favorite moment at OSU. I might throw a couple of these pictures up here tomorrow. I was digging through my nightstand and I found some pictures, Schleggs, from when we were in college.
Oh man.
Not playing pictures. They're evening pictures.
Oh, they were amazing. You should bring those on for
I'll
sure.
put those on. I was looking for pictures of my daughter as like a 2-year-old, and I've got a stack of actual photos that are some from like baby shower. There's some ones from we went to Cabo with Romo and Whit and Jessica and all them. And then there's also some from some John Cougar Mellencamp Wild Nights in Columbus, which there's some awesome ones of you. So Buckeyes, we'll get that going.
Really? That's amazing. I can't wait to see those.
I think you know what some of the nights are talking about. They're
you didn't have the pictures of like when we were at Craig's place, or did you give those to me?
Those are the pictures they're talking about.
So those are the ones you're talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Tyrannosaurus Schleggs is out there?
Oh, yeah. They're good.
Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, show them. I don't care. That was a long time ago. That guy.
Doesn't count.
That guy was fearsome.
Yeah. Maybe we'll pull this out tomorrow at the H. He'll love to see him. That's it for our tailgate talk. Coming up next, Schleggs will wrap up the show with his parting thoughts. All right, Schlegs, welcome back into the show. Final
Yeah.
segment. And one of the pictures, I'm not sure that you were alive. Like, I think there was a worry that you actually were dead. So
No, that happens.
Thankfully, you just like on the third day, we rolled the stone away, and you were able to stand up and
Just shocked me.
resurrect.
Just I honestly smelling salt. You know, back then it was just like a Keystone or a Bud Heavy, maybe some chicken wings and ran. Like, oh my gosh, is that chicken wings? Let's go, man. Hey, I throw this up. This is my parting thought here.
Hmm.
I just want to. I forget what it was that Ohio State had, and I want to say that it was well above a 3.0. And just remember this: like not all numbers are created equal. Not all schools have the same type of standard. This semester marks the highest full semester GPA in program history. That's pretty good. Now, I also don't know how they judge that scale. Is it a true 4.0? And
Yeah.
that's where I say there's a lot of different things, right? Some people are a little bit higher than others. I don't know. But that's a bold statement when you go out there. I like it that they're on the come up. Let's get to that 3.0. Pony up. It's a hard school, though. Small, intimate campus. They got some great food around SMU. Let's keep working on that GPA. I like it.
Absolutely. All right.
A lot of growth.
That is it for today's show. There's a great question that came in about Julian Sand. Maybe we'll try to get to it tomorrow as well. Thanks for tuning in, locking in with us today. Stay locked in tomorrow. We'll get the Hawkster and get rolling on a Wednesday afternoon.
Oh, I got a good one.
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.